All right. Hey, welcome to another episode of Coach P's Perspective. I'm excited, man. Today I have Pat and Amanda Hogan with me, and they are the co-authors of Wrestling the Alphabet. So if you're listening to this on my podcast, we'll also have this up on YouTube as well. Again, man, I'm excited to have these guys on here because I'm a lifelong wrestler. I'm a coach. And right now, this book is it's going crazy on social media in the wrestling world. And anybody that knows about wrestling knows that we are a tight little fraternity. It's a small world. It's a big world, but we're all interconnected somehow. And Wrestling the Alphabet right now is on every wrestling social media thing I see, which is awesome. So, Pat and Amanda, man, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having
Absolutely.
us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you bet. So, well, hey, let's do this. Let's just kind of start with your background a little bit individually, where you guys are from. I have a lot of coaches and athletes that listen to this, other people as well, but maybe, if you did sports. Now, Pat, I know that you were a state champion wrestler, but so where you guys grew up, a little bit about your sports background.
Yeah. So I wrestled from second grade all the way through college. From Cranford, New Jersey, in the New York metropolitan area. I wrestled, from second grade through college. I won a state title my senior year, and wrestled for the University of Southern Maine, Liberty, and then Messiah College. I'm actually bounce around. We started dating when we were 17, so she was introduced to wrestling.
Didn't know what it was until I was 17. At my high school, I think we had it for 1 year and then they cut the program. I'm not athletic, but I'm a big fan. I actually found out, so we dated since we were 17. I found out that there were wrestling moves when I was 18. I found a book. There was 1,001 wrestling moves. I assumed they just went out there and went at it.
I was like, hun, when I go to practice for 2 hours, what do you think we do? Yeah. But so
it's been a learning experience, but I definitely have grown to love the sport over the past decade and a half for sure.
Yeah. So, hey, I'm a bounce around guy too. I wrestled at 3 different colleges as well. So
okay.
from Oklahoma, and I was up at Missouri Valley College in high school, and then transferred to a JUCO in Kansas a little bit, and then out to a Division II school, Fort Hays State University. And so I feel you, man.
Yeah.
Now, you guys were high school sweethearts. Amanda, did you follow Pat to those colleges, or what was your college path there?
I was a bounce around gal myself. I started in New Jersey, and then I actually went to Liberty as well. So followed him around a little bit there. And then we moved back here, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know. We moved around a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I bounced around a bit too.
Okay. So did you have any sort of athletic background, or what were your interests? So I know that you're into literature. So what were were you mostly academic, Amanda?
I was extremely academic. I was a cheerleader. Some people consider it a sport. I don't know. It was fun. I enjoyed that. But yes, I loved school. And I think because I loved school so much, I became a teacher because I never wanted to leave it. So yeah, certainly more academic focused.
Okay, very good. So, all right, with this book, I'm an author myself. I kind of understand the process a little bit. I'm really interested, not only because this is wrestling, but also because I have children. And I don't know a ton about your book yet. To me, from the outside looking in, this seems like a brilliant concept. And so I want you guys to tell me, first off, did either of you dream of being authors before this thought for this book came along?
No, never. Yeah.
I think it's funny, like as a teacher, we always talk to kids. We're like, you are authors, you're a writer, you're doing all this. And I never really thought about the actual process or doing it. So definitely not a dream, right, but it's been really cool to do.
Yeah. All right. I'm the same way. I had started blogging because of some leadership stuff I did. And then thought like, hey, maybe if, like mid 50s or something, maybe I'll write a book whenever I'm in my 50s. And next thing I know, the opportunity came along. And so for you guys, like, just take me on the journey. Where did the thought process start on this, all the way up through like production of the book, man? Just tell us the story.
Yeah. So during quarantine, a few months ago, I was on Facebook scrolling and an ad came up for an ABC book for WWE wrestling. I'm not really into WWE wrestling, but I just went down like a Facebook, rabbit hole, and I was like, oh wow, this is pretty cool. Like, I wonder if they have something like this for wrestling. And I started searching, and I was like, there's several books about wrestling, but there wasn't any books that like featured like actual athletes, yeah, like current and former, and in like a fun way. And I was like, man, like we really should do this. And we kind of just tabled the discussion, like, oh yeah, let's do it, whatever. And then quarantine was happening, and we found ourselves getting into a rut.
Had a lot of time on our hands.
Yeah, and we just kept saying that we wanted to come out of quarantine with something positive, with we have all this time. I don't want to kick ourselves 6 months from now, a year from now, being like, we had all this time. And we started diving in with the book. You want to take over with that process?
Yeah, so the process, it was a really nice combination of our strengths. Clearly he knows more about wrestling than I do, so he came up with who was going to be our alphabet, and I think that was like the foundation. Once we figured out that we could make it fit, and we can fit all of the letters from A to Z, I feel like it went really quickly from there.
Yeah,
went really quickly from there. Found an illustrator that we really loved. Here's a little example. Askren was the first one we got, and as soon as we saw the example of him getting all funky with the A, we're like, yep, this is it. We can do this. Like, it's totally feasible. And as soon as we had the illustrator, I got to work. And I think what my favorite part of this whole thing was, yes, I've been like, I guess like a bystander fan, like a fan by association of wrestling. But I did the writing of the book. And so I had to do a ton of research about every single person in it. And I feel like I learned so much. And because of that, I just have such a greater appreciation of the sport and of the people. And I'm just like so impressed by these individuals that are in the book. And I think there was just like funny moments where I was just like, are you kidding? Like, that person did this before they were 21 years old. Like, how's that even feasible? So I wrote the text, and then we found people to print it for us.
Yeah. And that in and of itself has been a journey with just learning deadlines and production. It's a little screwy that some publishers and printers just don't have deadline. They just whenever they get you the books, they do. So but yeah, it's been a blast.
It's been super fun.
Yeah, so yeah, the graphic that you guys have behind you, first off, I'm a huge Ben Askren fan, so that's a phenomenal graphic that's back there. I love that. Okay, so you find your illustrator, and then who is your publisher?
We're self-published.
Self-published. Okay. Now, what was that process? Did you have like someone kind of mentoring you through it, or were you just studying? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I just started Googling.
There's a lot of stuff online.
Like self-publishing, and we reached out to maybe 50 different people, 50 different companies, and we kind of just clicked with one. They were super helpful. We came into the office, and they broke everything down for us of kind of how it works, and we decided to go with them.
So because it's amazing, and the reason why I asked that question is I'll have people that I don't know like contact me like, hey, somebody told me to get a hold of you because you have a book out, and I'm thinking about writing a book, and how do I do it? And I'm like, you know what? It's so funny because you would think that there was like an ABC process, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like everybody's story is completely different. So when I wrote my book, I initially was going to write a children's book. And this is what's funny is my blog was not about that at all. A lot of my stuff is personal growth and is connected with faith. And of course, the wrestling background and coaching background helps me. Okay. And so, and as you guys know, Pat, you being a wrestler, and then Amanda, you studying this now, there are so many life lessons in wrestling that we can apply to other areas of life. So real quick about what happened with mine is so I'd been blogging for a couple of years. I wrote like a funny Christmas story called The Christmas Chicken because my family always makes sugar cookies over Christmas. And one of my sons had to have a chicken cut out. Everybody else has like Christmas trees and Santa Claus and a cross. And so we come home, my wife's like, hey, look at the Christmas chickens. And she's like, kind of like shaking her head. And I'm like, so I write a story about the nativity scene from the viewpoint of the animals. And the Christmas chicken was kind of, I take it in, I read it to my family just kind of for fun. And my wife is like, this is like the best kids book I've ever read. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, you need to get it published. Contact a buddy that's connected. and he is like, oh man, I got a guy that's helped a couple of New York Times bestsellers. He connects me. And he told the guy all about the things I blog about, not about a children's thing. And man, I'm like, oh man, this dude's for real. This guy's like helped New York Times bestsellers. I'm not taking him the Christmas chicken. So long story short, I met with him. We had coffee. I walked out of there and I'm writing a manuscript. And he, he basically gave me a deadline and all this stuff. So now I'm like, dude, I don't even know. Like I had to, same thing. I had to Google, like, what should a manuscript look like? If I'm going to send this in, what font do I use? Like you're teaching yourself everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, and thankfully I found a publisher who worked well for me. But yeah, the whole process is just, yeah, go ahead, Pat.
Well, I was going to ask, did the Christmas chicken ever make the light of day?
I didn't. I know I have not published it, and maybe I should.
You got to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So now it's also funny that you guys said, and I'm going to hold myself accountable for that, by the way. But it's also funny you guys said that over quarantine, there's extra time. You don't want to walk away from this not having done something.
Yeah.
Same thing with my podcast for 2 or 3 years, because I public speak a lot of places. And so people are like, why don't you have a podcast? You should podcast. And I listen to them all the time. We get like, a few weeks into quarantine and same thing, man. I'm like, all right, I literally have no excuses now. Like I need to sit down and do this. So for those listening, we're still in this process of battling coronavirus and COVID and all this stuff. And we still have a little extra time on our hands. If you've been thinking about something, go do it, man. Just pull the trigger and jump in there. Absolutely. So what kind of courage and bravery did it take for you guys to do that? Was it just a discussion you had and we're jumping in, or tell me about that too?
Yeah. So, I wouldn't say that I'm an ideas man, but we moved around a lot in, our life. I'm currently on my third career. So I'm a real estate agent right now. Okay. I was a teacher for a couple of years, and then I was a cop for a couple of years. So I'm very much a dreamer. And, when we came up with this, it was like, okay, I think you're onto something, Pat, so we started. And then I think for me, it really, as soon as we had to like write that first check for the publisher, for the illustrator, like as soon as we started investing money, it was kind of like, all right, like we prayed about it. We talked to family. We think that we're supposed to do this. So, like, let's let it ride.
Jump in.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the same way. I mean, I don't know, man. Sometimes it's almost like you feel like God just put something on your heart, or you have a passion for something and you want to run toward that. And it can be a scary process. Sometimes people are really afraid. And so they either don't do it or they kind of toe dip. Yeah. And sometimes like it takes a financial investment, or it takes some sort of real action step to say, you know what, like we're in, man, we're doing this.
Yeah. And that's why, we wanted to make sure that we weren't, tiptoeing into it, that if we're going to do it, let's go all in. We invested, not all our money, but I mean,
it was a big investment.
Yeah, our life savings on this.
But it's something we believe in.
It's something that we believe in.
Brings a lot. I feel like I think your sister said something really thoughtful of like, It's not about the money. Like we created something that can bring joy to a lot of people. And that has been one of my favorite parts of this whole process, is seeing people's reaction and seeing kids reading the book, and people emailing like, when is it coming? And just the excitement behind it has just been so worthwhile.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, not only that, but from the other side, from the wrestlers that are in the book, we've gotten in contact with, not all of them, but a good majority. And, for me, it's just, I can't even describe it, just how like Lee Kemp 2 hours ago posted about this book. Like Lee Kemp has our book and likes it. It's just such an honor. And like, I know Dan Gable has gotten the book, and from that perspective, it's just it's been really fun.
Yeah. And what's amazing, and this doesn't just go for wrestlers, like I said, we're kind of like a tight little community, but there are so many high level people, whether it be business or wrestling or whatever it is. And sometimes we feel like they're really far off. But if we reach out and can get a hold of them, it's amazing how many of them are willing to support you, back you, communicate, and that's something I learned in the process with the book as I wrote my book and I went through and a lot of people that kind of like wrote, in there, you know how we'll get people to write, kind of pre-read the manuscript and then write a little something about it. And then that'll go in there and they're hyping your book, right? So I reached out to some pretty high level people that I didn't know, maybe I had a connection somewhere. It's amazing how many of them said yes. Or as I'm podcasting, people that I'll just reach out to that I don't even know at all. It allows you to step outside your comfort zone, to be bold. And then you realize like, man, those people are like willing to help and they're really cool. They're.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's, been a really fun experience that, for some of the wrestlers that we've reached out to have been like, oh my gosh, we're so honored, this and that. And it's like so surreal for me because, again, I know they're not celebrities or, mythical, figures, but
to an extent they are.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're heroes that I'm like, I was texting Rulon Gardner a couple weeks ago, like the second biggest upset in Olympic history. You know what I mean? That it's that yeah, everybody so far has been down to earth and wanting to support and help, which has been great.
Yeah. Now, Amanda, you were saying, outside the money, I mean, and of course, anything we do in life, we want to be successful.
Sure.
But man, like talking about bringing joy to kids and the families, like just looking at your promotionals and your graphics, the color, the illustrations, it already brings me joy. And I guess part of that is I'm a wrestling nut. But another part, like I like immediately imagine, and I can't wait to get my hands on the book because I immediately imagine sitting with my kids and reading this book. Right. I mean, we read books with our kids and I know they're going to be pumped about it. And my little boys are just now kind of getting into the wrestling world. My dad's a Hall of Fame coach and I started wrestling like from the moment I could walk and I'm starting them a little bit later. And Pat, it's a long journey, man. And just the injuries that can compound and all these other things. And so many kids get burned out. Yeah. So I'm starting them a little bit later, but I can't wait to sit down and just read the book with them. So now, Amanda, I got to think, because you are an elementary teacher, that this a little bit has to be a dream because especially like right now being COVID, I get to hear the teachers on days that I'm home via Zoom, talking with my children, going through books. I can imagine like you're going to have your own book to sit there and like be able to use in the classroom. How cool is that?
It is the absolute coolest. So nothing is normal right now. We're not fully in school, but I was in the building with a few kids and they were in 3rd grade and I brought the book in and almost none of them had heard of wrestling, but I put the book down. They were just so excited about it, just eager to hear who these people were. And they were flipping through and they eventually got to the title page and they looked at it and it said, by Pat and Amanda Hogan. They look up, they go, wait a minute, that's you. And they were so excited by it. So yes, it's absolutely, again, it's not something I ever dreamed of or like aspired to, but as a teacher, like books are my favorite thing in the whole world. And so to have been able to actually create one, like I'm holding a book that I wrote is an incredible feeling. So incredibly fun.
Now I know that you're into literature. So tell me, like, who are some of your favorite authors? Because I'm sort of a reading nerd too. But
oh gosh, I love like thrillers and mysteries. Like, are you talking about like adult books or like children's books?
Whatever. Because you know what, we're doing these podcasts, man. I mean, I want to draw these life lessons out, but I also want to tell your story and get to know you because that's where the power is, right? In relationships and in getting to know you guys.
Absolutely. I'm a member of Book of the Month Club. It is my favorite thing in the whole world. I currently am obsessed with someone named Riley Sager. He has really awesome like mystery novels. But I really don't have favorite authors. Just I'm drawn to whatever story I can find. Currently reading a book that I'm trying to read really slowly because I don't want it to end.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I feel that sometimes, like, and it's rare, but sometimes you get a book that's so good. Yeah, I do that. Like, I'm like slowing down the last few chapters because like I don't want it to end. It's almost like when you're watching.
Much left, and I'm putting it off.
Yeah. So now, what's funny is I did not enjoy reading growing up. My sister is one of those people that like read like a book or two a week, and she'd be up till 2 a.m. And Like I only read whatever the teachers assigned me.
Mhm.
And I did not like to read. It wasn't until I became an adult, really kind of got into like personal growth type stuff. And as an adult, I'd read a lot of coaching books, but I just made a decision that I'm going to read a lot because I can't experience everything in life. I can experience it much quicker. And of course, we want to experience things, right? But I can experience much quicker if I get to read about it. I can learn so much more. And what's cool about reading is it's like one of the only methods to get inside of another human's head, because you kind of get inside the author's head,
Yeah.
right? You get to experience them a little bit,
Hearing
which is
their
really
thoughts.
cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So, Pat, what about you?
I was gonna say I don't enjoy reading fiction. I'm very much into nonfiction, like
Mhm.
personal growth, not necessarily self-help, but just
Yeah.
um, I don't want to say reading with a purpose, but she's trying to get me into fiction or stories that I can't read for enjoyment of, like learning about a story and things like that. Like I like to read for knowledge and growth and things like that. So
And I read to escape.
exactly. So we both kind of have our
Niche.
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm the same as you, Pat. I mean, most of the things I'm reading are to build my faith or to learn coaching or sort of like self growth, personal motivation type things. But I often tell myself I need to read, and I love historical fiction.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you guys know who Andy Andrews is. Andy Andrews is hands down my favorite author. He's worked with presidents. He's worked at the University of Alabama football on all kinds of leadership stuff, but he writes a lot of historical fiction. Whenever I read those books, it is an escape. And so for me, like I'm always like, I should do more of this because I do so much heavy reading. I feel like this is really fun. And it's almost like, and maybe it's the wrestler in us. Like I don't allow myself to kind of have that fun. I'm like, no, no, no.
Right,
Yeah.
like I should be doing something. I should be.
My life is unicorn and rainbows as an elementary teacher, so I'm going to read for fun.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So that leads me into this. I feel like as people do things on high levels, they are always growing as human beings or working toward growing. I mean, it's weird and it's crazy, but it makes sense. Almost every person that I interview or speak with, or even have in my life, that's high level in areas, they are always trying to grow as human beings. So I'm big on success habits. Tell me, what are some of the things that you guys do individually, success habits? And it could be like morning routines, maybe, reading 10 pages a day, spending some quiet time praying or reading, whatever it is. Like, what are some working out? I'm huge on working out, but success habits that you have in your own lives.
Yeah. I think for me is I always try to be the first person in the building or the first person at work. Just generally, obviously right now with COVID, my office hours are very limited, but I would get to work at about 5:30, 6 o'clock. And I know that might not sound early in other areas, but in real estate, people don't get in until 10 a.m. Likewise, when I was a teacher, I just would always start the day making sure that I was the first person in the building to just get ready.
Yeah.
I like to read a bit every day. I feel like I keep coming back to reading, but similar. You were saying you didn't like to read when you were younger. I did, and then something happened. I don't know what it was. I stopped for a really long time, and at the beginning of this year, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to, and it's like one of the first. I wouldn't call it a resolution, but I started this year with a goal in mind, and I'm currently on track for meeting it. And reading at least a little bit every day has been really, really helpful. I feel like I'm using my time more purposefully instead of just sitting around lounging around, especially because we've had so much extra time. Like there's only so much Netflix you can watch. Reading has just been such a big part of my life this year. I just feel like a better person reading every day.
Yeah. So in saying that, what are some of your ideas to kind of stick and stay? Because a lot of times people want to create good habits, whether it's reading or eating better, working out or whatever. And they try to like jump in and do a whole bunch. And it's kind of like when people set, New Year's resolutions, they try to do a whole bunch and then it lasts for 10 days and then it's gone. Right. And most people that want to create great habits do small little things, but what are some of your tips to kind of stick and stay? Like, how can somebody who maybe doesn't read a lot, because I'm big on it and I believe they should, what do they do to create that great habit? Or what about like waking up early, Pat, to get your day ready? What do we do to create that great habit?
I mean, I don't want to say I'm the king of what you just said of like, I dive right into something and, do it well for 3-4 weeks. And then all of a sudden, one day gets messed up. So I try to focus on one area at a time, whether it be something as small as sleep or diet or finances, whatever I want to focus on. I just try to start very small and just create little goals, attainable goals that are small, short-term goals. To say like, all right, every day this week, I'm going to be in bed by 10 o'clock. And it doesn't seem like a big deal, but once you get into that routine that, you're going to bed every day at 10 o'clock, then you can start going on to something different of like, just creating those attainable short-term goals.
All right. So we'll go back to your book a little bit because there's a few things I want to ask. All right. What is like kind of the overarching goal that you guys have for this book?
A way to connect kids, the youth, to wrestling from a very young age, from literature or a children's book. I just thought it'd be really fun to have kids be able to see some of their heroes from a very young age and be able to, without ever seeing them wrestle, be like, oh yeah, Dad, I know David Taylor, or yeah, I know Lee Kemp, as a way to kind of hook them without being in the wrestling room.
Yeah, that's great. And you know what? I tell my athletes all the time, tell my wrestlers, like, you need to know the heroes of our sport. And it's amazing. I do wrestling camp. Well, in a normal year, I do a lot of wrestling camps all summer long. And I go and teach. I'm a clinician and things like that. Or even with my own team, I'll often ask, I'll say, okay, how many of you know who Jordan Burroughs is? And some will. How many of you guys know who John Smith is? Even less, because now he's not a competitor, he's a coach. But then I'll say, okay, how many of you guys know who LeBron James is? And every single hand goes up, right? Even Michael Jordan, who's been retired a long time, every single hand goes up. And I'll say, like, man, you guys are wrestlers. You need to know the heroes of our sport. And so, like, I'll assign them, like, hey, you need to go find one person and study them a little bit. Now I have a comprehensive book that I can say.
Wow. Here's your homework, kiddos.
Absolutely. So this is awesome. Like you said, for even if they haven't been on the mats a lot, to get to know the heroes of our sport. And okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot, but I don't want you to, we're not negating anybody else. Who was your favorite person to study or to write about in this process?
I have my answer, and I've had my answer since I wrote the book. I think going into it, I am so impressed by Kyle Snyder. Like, I find him so impressive. Everything he was able to do, I think I mentioned at the beginning, by the age of 21, blows my mind.
Yeah, I came home from work one day and she was like,
can you believe this?
Yeah, like, can you believe Kyle Snyder? I'm like, yeah, I know what Kyle Snyder did.
But I didn't know who he was before this process. Like, yeah, I'd heard his name in passing, you talking to your brother about it, but just, I'm so impressed by him. He is just an incredible human being and just so good at what he does.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And what's cool is we forget, how young Snyder even still is, right? Because he's already done so much. And even when he was 19 and 20 years old and just killing it on the college and international scene, he looked like he was 30 because the guy is just huge and muscular and just, and then you're like, whoa, wait a minute. This is like, he's like high school age, or I mean, he's just barely, yeah. And the guy's, he's amazing. So that's a great one. Pat, what about you? Do you have a favorite?
Oh, that's tough. I knew mine from the get-go.
Yeah, I almost want to plead the fifth with this. But it has been so amazing. And it's funny, you know, we talk about Kyle Snyder, but it's like really, really like it's going to be tough because I feel a little bit more emotionally invested. Is like Kyle Snyder has to wrestle Jaden Cox for an Olympic spot.
I know. I don't know what I'm going to do.
You know, Kyle Dake, Jordan Burroughs, Isaiah Martinez is in that weight class. You know, so it's just funny that you bring up Kyle Snyder and how wonderful he is. But Jaden Cox, when he was in college,
I know.
and they have to wrestle. So again, I feel a little bit more emotionally invested that you know, it's going to be great wrestling, and it's a great problem to have as a country. But you know, it's going to be tough in whatever March or April, whenever the trials are.
I think that's a good way to put it. Just like emotionally invested. I think I wouldn't call myself like a sports fan. Like I'm not like, oh, I can't wait to go watch football. I like you always watch 30 for 30s on ESPN, and I just love the emotion behind sports. And I think I now feel so emotionally invested in all of these people, which has now made me emotionally invested in the sport, which has been a really like enlightening thing.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I love college football. I'm not a real big NFL guy, and I haven't played it in years, but you know, a few years ago, it's like you join a team and you go through and do the whole fantasy football thing. And then all of a sudden, like you start like cheering for these guys because they're on your team and you start to know about them, right? So yeah, once you like have done something to make a connection there, it means more to you. And what I'm really hoping is like so many kids, or let's just say, you know, maybe someone who wasn't in the wrestling world, a mom or a dad or someone who wasn't in the wrestling world as well, who's maybe reading this to their kids, this helps them make that connection to see how awesome wrestling is too, in all areas.
Yeah, I can't wait to see again once COVID clears up. You know, young kids going up to people in the book and having them sign their page and things like that.
That would be so fun to see.
Because again, you're going up to, you know, your heroes, and you know.
Absolutely, I didn't even think about that. I mean, as a kid, I would have loved, and I'm real fortunate growing up in Oklahoma. I got to go to a lot of Oklahoma State wrestling matches, a lot of OU matches, different, you know, U.S. Opens and things that were held down there, and go and get autographs from these guys that were my heroes whenever I was younger. And, you know, usually it was like on a napkin or a piece of paper. Like every now and then I'd have a poster, but how cool would it be to have like a comprehensive book and like, hey, my goal is to get all these signatures through. Now, there's guys in this book. Girls wrestling is the #1 fastest growing sport in America in high school and in college. I've always had, you know, 3 or 4 girls that wrestled for me. Last year was our first year in Kansas to have a full girls team. We had around 20 girls on our team. Buddies of mine, one of my former assistant coaches is the head coach at York College for the girls program up there. It's blowing up. So tell me about, you know, you guys have some females in there too as well, right? Yeah.
So, you know, when we set out to write this book, we wanted to try to show a pretty good cross section of wrestling. And, you know, we started going through the list, and, you know, what was really awesome about it is it was a conscious decision to include, you know, women, but it wasn't like oh great, where are we going to find, you know, women to put it
there's
in
incredible women wrestlers.
Yeah,
so it was easy.
Yeah, so it was really important and easy for us to put in Helen Maroulis, Adeline Gray, and Jakara Winchester.
Yeah, and it's one of the things I love about wrestling. Having an all-girls team last year, hearing a lot of these girls who had never wrestled or been around wrestling, just their thoughts on it overall. Wrestling is a sport that, man, it doesn't matter your ethnicity. It doesn't matter your body shape or size. It doesn't matter your gender. Like almost anybody can find their niche or their place in the sport of wrestling, which is awesome. You know, nothing against basketball, but I mean, if you're not a big, tall guy, you're probably just going to have trouble making it to high levels. You would have to be the exception to not, right? Absolutely. To be a lineman in football, you're going to have to be a huge human being. You know, in wrestling, it's like, because we have weight classes, because so much of it is what comes from the inside of you, almost anybody can get in where they fit in, which I love that about the sport. And I'm so glad that you guys were able to make that part of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like you said, with wrestling, obviously, athleticism and God-given gifts are important, but with wrestling, it's really a sport where if you put in the work and have, that inner drive, you can have a tremendous amount of success. And again, like you said, it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. You can be a part of wrestling. So we were really, really happy to again include women in the book, but I don't want to make it seem like we did it out of charity. Like, they deserve to be in the book.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. So, and this is such a good time, like I said, right now for women's wrestling, because the growth is just taking off. My own daughters, they don't wrestle yet. I'm hoping they will, or I'm kind of talking to them about it. And even if they don't, though, they love the sport. They like, they love coming to our dual meets and tournaments and watching our team, things like that.
But it
So-
also it's exposing some little girls to it.
Yes.
I'm a little bit embarrassed to say, my 6-year-old niece, when she got the book, flipped to Helen Maroulis and kind of looked and was like, I didn't know girls could wrestle. And I was like, that hurt me, that I didn't do a better job of, exposing her to women's wrestling from an earlier age, or just, I don't know, letting her know that there is girls, you can wrestle.
Right.
So, I think this too could help for a lot of girls out there that maybe feel not alienated, but feel like, oh, there's only a couple girls that wrestle, or there's nobody in my town that wrestles. I have to go to a different county. And then having this book and seeing, representation in it, I hope helps.
Absolutely. So overall, what was your favorite part of writing this book?
It's been really fun. I think just working together. I think we're a really great team. I think my personal favorite part is just having a greater connection to the sport, which means that, like, I don't know, I feel like a better life now. Like, I'm like the best wrestling wife ever now. It's just, I don't know, it's another way for us to connect.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, for me, throughout this whole process, yes, it's been stressful, and yes, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? But then we always, at the end, come and like just smile, and we're like, this is fun.
So much fun.
You know what I mean? So being able to bond with you over wrestling has been a blast. And then also at this point, connecting with the wrestlers that are in the book, as well as seeing, some of the kids experience the book, has been, really, really rewarding. We've had a couple people reach out to us and share, personal stories about their life and about how this book means something to them. That's been really, humbling and gratifying.
Yeah. You guys just set up my next question perfectly, because you're talking about relationships. So I think you guys looked at my notes or something.
Yeah.
But, and for those that listen, man, like when I interview people, like they have no idea. Like I don't send these questions ahead of time, because I want it to be real and off the top. But relationship advice. All right. You guys are high school sweethearts. You're still together. You're working together doing this. What's some of your best relationship advice, husband and wife? No pressure.
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, not to sound corny, but I mean, Amanda is my best friend. We're best friends. So I think just, I don't know. I don't want to say it's easy, because
I think it's easy too.
Because we're best friends. Yeah, I don't know. Just
marriage doesn't feel hard, but I know it is hard for some people. Or it can be. It's not always perfect. We're not perfect at all, but it does feel easy. And I think it is because we made a conscious choice really young that we were going to do this and stick it out. We've been together for 15 years now.
I was going to say, it's having my college coach spoke about this a lot, and about how love is a choice. That, there's no other option for us but to make things work. So just having that determination and that that conscious choice of loving her when maybe I don't feel like it, or her loving me when she doesn't feel like it, or maybe when I don't deserve it. So I think it's just that overall mindset, and I don't know. I don't think that was a good answer, but
I don't. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if I have advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, so emotions are fickle, right? And not that you don't still have emotions. I mean, in marriage, my wife and I have been together for a long time, so about 19 years. Do I still love her passionately? Absolutely. Are there days where she probably like, this dude's driving me nuts, or vice versa? Well, we're human beings, right? But like you said, commitment, you've made that mental decision, and then you made commitment, which is something that, these days, for some people, that really means a lot. Some people maybe haven't fully connected with the term committing, but there's so much to it, right? As an athlete, as a wrestler, especially, man, you wrestled in college too. There are so many days. I would say every season, there were a couple times that season where it would go through my head if I still want to do this or not. And I was, I'm an All-American, and I was varsity always. But maybe you get injured or whatever, and there's this thing in your head like, man, do I want to keep doing this?
What am I doing?
And then it comes back to commitment, right? Not making a rash decision at that moment because of emotions or whatever. I would always ask myself, like, could I go to college having eligibility and not be a wrestler? I don't think so, but when it comes to marriage, there's also that same commitment aspect. Again, another thing that wrestling kind of teaches you along the way, maybe some that's already internal, but maybe some that's built up with wrestling as you go through the process.
Yeah. And I think having that foundation of commitment and desire now makes things easier, but because we obviously fight and have arguments and disagreements, and
but there's a comfort and like a lack of fear knowing that you can be mad at me or you cannot like what I have to say, but knowing that we have that commitment.
Right.
Like, I never have to doubt, because there's just a comfort in knowing that we're both coming from the same place, and we think commitment means the same thing. We have really clear understanding of what that means.
And having that makes communication then easier, and making decisions and everything easier, because we're on the same team.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, if somebody wants to write a book, maybe they've had that dream and that goal, whatever, and they just haven't been, like, what advice would you give them after going through and really even still being in the midst of this process? Because that's something people don't realize too. Like, okay, you have to do the manuscript. You got to write the whole thing first, and then you got to edit it a million times, and you have the manuscript, but then there's the whole marketing aspect and all of that stuff that comes along with it, and that continues to go. I mean, my book is 3-4 years old now, and there's still marketing stuff that comes along with that. So what advice do you have for people that maybe want to step out and write a book?
First, leap. Were you going to say that?
That was legitimately what I was going to. Yeah.
My favorite quote is "Leap and the net will appear." It can be. I'm sure people have ideas, or like you wanted to do a podcast. People have things that they want to do, right? Maybe they're thinking about doing a book, or just do it. I think the main thing you have to do is actually just leap and do it. But I think as far as like project wise, any advice?
No. I think, you just have to jump. You just have to leap. You just have to start. Because that was kind of, we prayed about it, we talked with family, but ultimately the decision came down to, whenever it is, when I'm on my deathbed, I'm going to look back and regret not doing this rather than doing it. Even if we wrote a book, nobody bought it, we lost all this money, we would be on our deathbed saying, I'm glad we went for it. So my advice to anybody, if you have that stirring in your heart, that that, you know, butterflies in your stomach about an idea,
Leap.
yeah, leap. You gotta go for it.
Yeah, I love that advice. I mean, and I'm gonna make sure I utilize that quote. Leap and the net will appear.
My favorite.
That's good. I've never heard that. That's really good. But yeah, so many people maybe have, and whether it's writing a book or something else, right? Podcast or whatever it is, starting in business, they have that fear and they don't want to do it. But it's amazing how, like you said, whenever you just make that mental commitment and you just go for it, then, or maybe it's financial, whatever it is, whenever you made some sort of commitment, man, then you're willing to figure it out. Then you're willing to go through and put the work in that it's going to take to be able to get there. And on the other side, there's that lasting legacy, like you said, whether it did great or not. And I know you guys' book is going to do phenomenal. It's already, like I said, blowing up in the wrestling world, doing awesome. But, you know, for me, whenever I wrote my book, it was like, okay, and this is stupid. I probably should have been a much better wrestler, and I think I was pretty good, but I have 3 coaches that in my life, I've had 3 coaches that are in the National Hall of Fame. And I've been able to learn so much from them along the way. And as I'm teaching it to my athletes and some stuff to my children, you know, then I'm like, man, if I don't write this stuff down, like a lot of this is going to be lost, right?
Mhm.
I teach it to people and then you hope that they learn it and pass it on, but having it in writing. And also someday my children can look back and be like, this is who my dad was, you know? So once it's in print, like, man, that's part of your legacy from then on. And then hopefully it positively impacts other lives, and how many little boys and girls are going to be inspired to go on and be good wrestlers, and not just good wrestlers, because wrestling in itself doesn't change the world, but who it makes you along the way can give you a platform to be able to change and positively impact so many people. Like you said, Amanda, just reading about Kyle Snyder, like you just study that dude and you want to be a better person in every area of your life. You want to work harder. It's like,
Well, I didn't do enough.
Yeah.
I need to do more.
exactly. And, you know, and someone like Kyle Snyder, now he has this platform to positively impact so many people, which he utilizes in an excellent fashion. Jaden Cox does the same thing, you know, kind of going back to that. And man, it's so frustrating that, you know, we're going to go from a non-Olympic year having 10 weight classes, you know, and it's weird. There's the years you have 8 weight classes or 10, and then you got to cut it down to 5 or 6. That has happened over the last 30, 40 years. Different years bring different amount of weight classes in non-Olympic years. And it's like the International Olympic Committee. You're like, what would it hurt to add a couple more weight classes? It wouldn't hurt anything.
Right. A couple of years ago, you know, for a very avid wrestling fan, you know, it would matter, but like, you know, USA wasn't that good. So the weight class of changing was, you know, I don't want to say it didn't matter, but now, I mean, USA wrestling is so good that you're going to have, with Kyle Snyder and Jaden Cox, you're going to have an Olympic champion or a world champion in bronze medal in the Olympics not make the Olympics.
Yeah.
You're going to have Jordan Burroughs or Kyle Dake not make it, which it's insane.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're literally going to have Olympic medalists setting at home. We're literally going to have world champions setting at home.
Yeah.
Either way, no matter who wins in those weight classes.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like I said, it's good for American wrestling, right. But man, and then whenever you study those guys and know how awesome people they are, you know, and you become fans of them, then it's like you hate it for them even more because you know everything they put into it. But I guess that's sports, right? There's that competitive nature, and it is what it is. And in life, there are things we can control and things we can't. So, you know, focus on the controllables. But all right. So as we get ready to end this, I always like to ask a question. Call it fast feet, because in sports, we gotta have fast feet. And you guys got to be quick on your feet here. And if you guys want to answer the same question, you can, or if you each want to pick one. But so here are the categories. I want you to tell me about a highlight, a hero, or a hardship in your life, and just expand upon it, right? So something you learned in those areas, a highlight, hero, or a hardship.
Highlight, hero, or hardship. I'm so bad at on the spot. Give me a minute.
All right, I'll go.
I'll think.
A hardship for me was, so in high school, I did very well. I was a New Jersey state champion, and my identity was very much tied to wrestling and my success. I was a very poor high school student, and really just put everything into wrestling, and I was Pat Hogan, the wrestler. And it wasn't until I got to college and kind of bounced around and didn't have the same level of success. And it really, really rocked my identity and who I was, because for 20 years of my life, I was Pat Hogan, the wrestler. And now I wasn't, not that I wasn't good at wrestling, but I didn't have the same level of success. So it kind of, really rocked me. So having that hardship, though, was, I think, one of the best things for my life overall, because it allowed me to, not imagine, but re-examine what and who I am, and where my identity, really lied. So, that was my hardship.
I think that, and I want to expound upon that, Amanda, while you're kind of thinking here, but because I think that is so important. So many athletes get caught up in making their sport their identity. And I did the same thing. I mean, I've done the same thing numerous times in my life. And whether it's an athlete or a business person or whatever, sometimes people just make success in that area their idol, and it kind of becomes who they are, right? For a college athlete who maybe is graduating, and this is tough. I know when I finish competing and I'm done after my senior year of college, I'm like, okay, I've always thought like I lifted and stayed in shape and things like that just because I enjoyed doing it, right? It wasn't necessarily for wrestling. And all of a sudden, like I'm in there lifting and I'm like, where's my motivation? Like I've always had a carrot dangling in front of me to be a state champion or national champion or whatever it was. But then we look at like guys like Jordan Burroughs or Henry Cejudo when they win the Olympics, and they tell the same stories. Tom Brady told the same story winning a Super Bowl, but it's all awesome. And then they come home. There's a point where they go, is that it? Like I thought I would feel different. I thought I would feel complete. Now I have a whole, like where I thought that was going to be filled and it wasn't, right? Our identity can't be wrapped up in success. We have to know who we are, whether that's faith in Jesus or whatever it is for different people. We can really connect our identity to those areas, which is really dangerous, because then when you lose that or you don't succeed, it can absolutely crush you. Yeah. But like you said, also at the same time, that hardship can make you reevaluate and realize who you really are. So I love that, Pat. That's great. All right, Amanda, how about you?
All right. I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily a highlight, but it's something that I am proud of and excited by, and that I know a lot of people don't necessarily have. And so I found what I love to do at a really, I wouldn't say young age, because I didn't always want to be a teacher, but it lights me up and it brings me joy. And I know that a lot of people, like, you're still looking for what is your thing. And I know deep down that I was put on this earth to be a teacher. Yes. And I have that comfort in that feeling. And I've had so many incredible moments with kids that I am grateful for, that are highlights in my life daily. And I think that's a highlight for me constantly. Just that I have something that I know others are trying to find and they're seeking, and I have that, and I feel so much joy in that.
Yeah. There aren't many things better than doing something that lights you up. Those are good words. I like the way you said that, because even though it takes time, effort, energy, sometimes you can be exhausted, whatever. It's almost like, I'm a workout guy and I'm weird because, well, we're wrestlers. But it's like sometimes like maybe you don't feel good physically, and then you go work out, and then when you get done, you just feel better, right? It's almost the same way. Like whenever you find that thing that you're calling that lights you up, like no matter how you feel, like once you go do it, then it's like you're energized by it and you're fulfilled by it, somewhere deep inside of you. So yeah, finding your calling is so important. And as a teacher as well, and as someone who has children, I'm super excited to hear that, because you want your kids to have that teacher, right? That's the teacher you want them to have, because then they come home and they're passionate. Or even right now during COVID, they get off Zoom and they're passionate. And that's something that I really feel like in life that can't be faked. It's kind of like shape in wrestling. You can't fake shape. Like you can act like you're in shape, and then you get in the heat of the battle, and we're going to know pretty quick if you're in shape, right? You can't really fake confidence. You can act like you're confident, but then you get in adversity, and we're going to know. And you can't really fake passion. People feel that, right? They know when you're truly passionate. They can hear it in your voice. And what's cool is as I'm interviewing you guys and we're talking about wrestling the alphabet, I can see both of you light up. So those who get to watch this on YouTube, not only hear the voices, but like literally see it. I can see you two light up, and I can also hear the passion and excitement in your voices, which makes me even more excited about it and tells me that this is going to make a big impact on the wrestling community and on a lot of people. So thank you guys for following your dream and writing the book.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. So, all right, before we get off here, tell us, how can we find you, social media, website, things like that, and follow the wrestling the alphabet, and also help. So, us as a wrestling community or anybody that's listening to my podcast, we're going to jump in and we're going to help promote this thing too.
That'd be great. Thank you. Well, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Wrestling the Alphabet. Our website is also wrestlingthealphabet.com. Yeah, we have our book, which is beautifully brightly colored. I made it rainbow for a reason. It's just so lovely to look at. But we also have a coloring book, and we have a poster as well. So just surround your kiddos with it and share in love of the greatest sport in the world.
Absolutely. And then is that where we can purchase your book, is off of your website?
Yeah, you can purchase it at wrestlingthealphabet.com.
Okay, so I will make sure that I have your social media links and your website in my show notes. So anybody listening on podcast, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever it is, you guys go check the show notes, and then you can see wrestlingthealphabet.com. You can see and make sure that you go follow on social media. And then if so inclined, hopefully you are, share this out on social media. Now, is the book available for purchase and to put in our hands right now?
It is. So our website still currently says pre-order shipping mid-November, but we're in our garage right now, completely surrounded by boxes, and our car is filled with boxes to ship.
As I say, tomorrow morning we are going to be caught up.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they can purchase it now, and it will be shipped out in the next day or two.
Very good. I will say, as an author myself, you get pretty adept, or you get used to going to the post office. You get used to going and
we're making friends.
We've got friends here now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, again, thank you, Pat and Amanda, for being on. I appreciate it. Like I said, I'm going to be promoting Wrestling the Alphabet. We'll make sure that we're putting the information out there and positively impacting lives. Any parting words from you guys?
No, just thank you so much, for having us. Thank you to everybody who's listening and who's, supported us. We can't thank you enough.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. Well, this has been another episode of Coach P's Perspective. Thank you for listening. May God bless you, shine his face upon you, and smile upon you. Until next time, peace.